It's that time again for another top 10 list, and today we're going to be focusing on Xbox Game Pass. A big part about Xbox Game Pass is discovering new games, and a few weeks ago I did a top 25 games on Xbox Game Pass list, but I still felt like I wanted to talk about more games to help people discover some of the lesser talked about games on Xbox Game Pass rather than just talking about the big AAA titles. So that's where this list comes in, as we will be talking about the top 15 best hidden gems on Xbox Game Pass. Though do remember that this is only an opinion and yours may be different. If it is, let me know what your favorites are so other people can discover those games as well. Now, I do want to preface that I did not include any of the games that I put on my top 25 list, so you should go check that out as well, and I wanted to include two games that currently aren't out yet, but should be releasing over the next 2 weeks, which is A Plague Tale and Gris. They haven't released just yet, but that is the amazing thing about Game Pass, is they just constantly release great games. But yes, I do highly recommend playing both of those as well when they do release. With that said, let's get right into the video. At number 15 we have Minute, which is an incredibly weird and charming little game. From a visual standpoint, it's about as simple as it could possibly look, but it somehow works, and it's honestly a very enjoyable game. It takes inspiration from the isometric Zelda franchise, but it has a catch. Upon awakening in your house, you have 60 seconds to achieve whatever goal you set out to do, and then you'll die. And even though you only have 60 seconds, it never really feels frustrating, and all of your goals are attainable. When first awakening, you may look for a sword, and once you grab it, you'll then have it in your second life. Then, in your next run, you may need to find a villager to complete a task for a reward such as killing 5 crabs, and then again, you keep the reward from that point forward. It's an addicting little game loop, and I'd highly recommend it for a quick, fun experience. Metroidvania games have kind of exploded in the last few years with a lot of really high quality games in the genre, but one that I see often overlooked is Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight. I think right away the art style is really attractive with its pixel art mixed in with anime-like characters. It's a brutally difficult game where you will need to outwit your opponents rather than just using sheer brute force. It's a nice addition, and for those seeking a challenge may really like this game. You may not get a ton of new abilities, but I think the overall feel of the game and its combat system is strong enough to carry this game from beginning to end. Absolver is a very unique game that has you exploring various locations to fight your enemies. It very much is a fighting game, but it feels like something more than that. You can play this by yourself or in cooperative gameplay, which really adds to the experience. And something to mention here is that the AI opponents are not the only threat in this campaign world, though, as other real-life players may be inhabiting the world as well. This offers two different variables where you can either help out these players by fighting alongside them or to fight them in a duel. There is also plenty of customations, and I really enjoy the simplistic art style in Absolver. It may not be a perfect game, but it has a lot of potential, and I think it's very fun. The Turing Test reminds me a lot of one of my all-time favorite games, Portal. I'm not saying that you can teleport from portal to portal, but Turing Test has that lab rat feeling to it where you can go room to room solving different complex puzzles. It eases you into the game with simple puzzles at first, but as time goes on, it introduces you to new and innovative ways to play the game, and it asks you to think more deeply once entering a room. It also has a nice space atmosphere to it that's very appealing to the eye, and I think if you like games like Portal or even Talos Principle, then you're going to love this game. The Gardens Between was one of the first games that made me realize just how good Xbox Game Pass truly is, because in all honesty, I would have never played a game like this if it wasn't for Xbox Game Pass. It just didn't seem like a game I would like, but I'm so glad that I got to try out this little gem of a game. The Gardens Between is a very puzzle-driven game with a time mechanic to it. It kind of reminds me of games like Braid, where you must manipulate time to change your environment to complete a puzzle. It's a simple mechanic, but the execution is done just so well here and really adds to the puzzles. It never feels too difficult though, and it's really a short game at only about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 tops, but it's a 3-hour experience that you're not going to forget. I have always really liked 3D platformers, especially as a kid playing games on the Nintendo 64. The problem is there just isn't that many great 3D platformers in today's era. Super Lucky's Tale though is that exception. Super Lucky's Tale to me really feels like old 90s 3D platformers, and I think that can be both a good thing and a bad thing. The camera work isn't always perfect, but it has that collectathon aspect to it that I think is just so addicting in these type of games. The platforming also feels really tight, and it has a lot of character behind it. I think if you like old 90s 3D platformers though, you're really gonna like Super Lucky's Tale. Snake Pass is another 3D platformer that I think is really good, though it isn't like any other platformer I've ever played before. The reason for this is because there isn't actually any jumping. Instead, you're a snake that must slither his way through various worlds and locations. At first, you're just using several bamboo poles to wrap yourself around collecting hidden items and progressing level to level, but there is a real challenge to it as time goes on. I've seen some people complain about the controls, but honestly, I never had an issue with it, and I found this game to be a lot of fun. Also, as an added bonus, David Wise did music and it's outstanding. Point-and-click adventure games is a genre that not everybody enjoys, it's very niche. But Thimbleweed Park is an all-time great game in this genre. It harps back to old LucasArts games like Monkey Island, but it has carved its own identity in the modern era of games. With that said, Thimbleweed Park is a game set in the 80s about a murder you must solve. It uses logic-based puzzles, it has nice and memorable characters, and a great plot. It may not change your mind on point-and-click adventure games if you don't already like this genre, but if you do, Thimbleweed Park is a must-have. If you take pinball and mix it in with Metroidvania games, that's exactly what you get in Yoku's Island Express. I never would have thought the two would mix so well together, but it's actually kind of brilliant. There isn't a game like it on the market, it's just so very innovative, and I must say, it's adorable. You play as a little beetle, pushing around a ball in a typical Metroidvania-like world, so if you like Metroidvanias, that is already a plus. But in all honesty, I would almost put Yoku's Island Express in its own category. If you want something just a little different that's fun from beginning to end, then Yoku's Island Express may be worth it. Children of Morta is the newest game on this list as it just released, and it's definitely a game you need to go check out. Children of Morta is a dungeon crawler, and something that really surprised me is how good the narrative is. See, it's about a family of 6 that fights off a corrupted mountain. You can play as any of the 6 family members, which all has their own unique fighting style and abilities, which adds a lot of depth to this game. And as I said earlier, the narrative really surprised me because the game is literally being narrated, which makes for a nice story. Then you have the art style, which is gorgeous in my opinion. If any of these things interest you, then definitely go check out Children of Morta. Upon entering the world of SteamWorld Dig 2, you're introduced to the robotic Wild Wild West-like world, and it does have a very rich world with a lot of exploration. It is a Metroidvania, but it's so different than many within the same genre. It has RPG mechanics, and its main attraction is that you are to mine for an abundance of resources, and you can upgrade various abilities. This can be incredibly addictive, and most of the world you will be able to dig, which allows for a lot of rewarding exploration, but some of this is also a little bit more linear that will have you solving puzzles. These are actually some of my favorite sections in the game. It also has a very attractive steampunk art style to it, and I've seen people absolutely fall in love with this game, and really I don't blame them. It's an excellent game, and it's a game that I think everybody should try at least once. Moonlighter is one of the best looking pixel art games I've ever seen. It really goes to show you why pixel art continues to be as popular as it is still in 2020 with its colorful world and detailed but pixelated characters and its fluid animations. Moonlighter is not just good because of its art style though, but it's also a good game. It's a roguelike action RPG where you also have to manage your own shop. You must explore several dungeons to obtain new items that you then sell in your shop to make a living, but must always fear that risk-reward to dying like any other roguelike game, and it's this loop that is what is so great about it. It sounds like it's going to be rather simple on paper, but once you play it, don't be too surprised if you find yourself addicted to Moonlighter. If I could explain my Friend Pedro in the shortest way possible, I would simply say it's crazy, chaotic fun. While in many shooters it'll ask you to kill your enemies, in My Friend Pedro it asks you to do that with style. See, My Friend Pedro is part parkour, part shooter, with an addition of arcade multipliers. The quicker you take out your enemies, the more points you get, but it's the creativity and how you do it that will have you craving more as you flip upside down and use the environment to your advantage. It's not a game with a lot of complex rules, but with what it does it masterfully. Mutant Year Zero launched in Xbox Game Pass day one, and from that point forward, it has become one of my favorite Xbox Game Pass games. It's similar to games like XCOM with its tactical turn-based RPG combat. The one thing that is really interesting about Mutant Year Zero is its stealth mechanics. The thing is, you can actually get an advantage or even put yourself in a disadvantage in how you decide to enter combat. See, you also explore the world around you, and as you sneak from point to point, you enter the battle by getting your characters in position and then surprising your enemy. It's a clever addition to this type of game, and I really adore the art style here and the design of the characters. It has an almost gritty, realistic art style to it, but then you see the characters, a duck and a pig, and it looks phenomenal. I think the world as a whole is very well done, and a game that I think any RPG fan should try. The Dark Souls games have really created a genre of their own, and with that, there has been many clones over the years that more often than not has failed in comparison. However, Remnant from the Ashes, unlike many others, may find itself inspired by the Dark Souls franchise, but instead of focusing on just sword-based combat, it instead prides itself on ranged combat as well, like guns. It does have melee-based weapons too, but overall the combat stands tall as some of the best I've seen in games for a long time, and the movement in general just feels fantastic. Every weapon feels weighty and precise, and because of that, it'll ask the players to play smart rather than just use brute force. It is a very challenging game as well, with well-crafted bosses. On top of that, it's also a 3-player co-op game that you can drop in and out of, so if you find things too challenging, you can always play with a friend as well. I also like the fact that it has classes in this game with their own unique setups, so I think it has some replayability on top of everything else if you decide you want to play different playstyles. Remnant from the Ashes, though, is a game I really haven't heard much buzz about, but that shouldn't be the case. Go do yourself a favor and play this game, because you may be surprised by how truly excellent it is. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if I forgot to mention any games that you think deserves to be on the list, let me know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.